Hey there, scientists. Because I am a fungi, today we are talking about decomposers. And you are going to be able to describe the role of decomposers in food webs and in cycles of matter. Let's do this, scientists. Welcome back, scientists. I am Mr. Steier, and this is Mr. Steier's classroom. So yes, for those of you who caught my nerdy dad joke, we're talking about decomposers today, and we will be talking about fungi. As you can recall from our previous lessons, we have spent time talking about a food chain and about a food web and how energy moves from the sun through different systems. But, and this is a big but, what we haven't talked about yet is how energy ends through those systems. Like, how does it become a giant cycle? And so today we will be talking about decomposers. And your goal today is you are going to be able to describe the role of decomposers in food webs and in cycles of matter. So our first question is, where have you seen mushrooms growing? Where have you seen fungi? Where have you seen mushrooms growing? Any place that you have been. Maybe you've seen them in a forest floor, maybe you've seen them in your front yard, maybe you've seen them around trees. Think about where you have seen mushrooms growing. And then our next question that goes with that is, how do you think those mushrooms get their energy? It's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, how do mushrooms get their energy? You know, if I look at these mushrooms on this page right in front of me, one of the things that I notice is that they are white and red and a little bit of yellow, but they're not green. So, do mushrooms make their own food? Because I'm pretty sure they are not producers, since we are talking about decomposers today. When we look at this heading decomposers, what do you think the heading decomposers means? How do decomposers get their energy? And what are some kinds of decomposers? Well, right away, we're going to make a guess. We're going to use our scientific knowledge and say, hey, if we're talking about mushrooms, or if we're talking about fungi and fungi must be a decomposer. And that is correct, it is. The other big decomposer that we're going to talk about is bacteria. And bacteria is a very prevalent and common decomposer. So let's dig some more into this and see what else we can learn. So decomposers. The mushroom in the photo is neither a producer nor a consumer. It is neither producer nor a consumer. So it's not a producer and it is not a consumer. The mushroom in the photo, where does it get its energy? The mushroom gets its energy from dead leaves, wood, and other parts of decaying plants. The mushroom is a decomposer, an organism that gets energy by breaking down dead organisms or the waste of living things. So when all those leaves fall to the ground in the fall, and all that organic matter, all those leaves are dead, they fell off the tree, they're no longer alive. When they break down, decomposers, bacteria, fungus, they get energy from those things. Fungi, such as the mushroom, and the microscopic organisms called bacteria, are two kinds of decomposers. When any plant or animal in a food web dies, it is broken down by decomposers. Decomposition eventually restores or recycles nutrients back to the soil. The nutrients released by decomposers help plants grow. So when we have our food web and we're making it into a giant cycle where it comes back and the plants get nutrients again from the ground, from the soil, that's coming because the decomposers have broken down that dead matter and made it back into nutrients for the producers to grow again. So we're going all the way back to our very first lesson right now, where we talked about what do plants need in order to grow and survive. And one of those key things was nutrients. Well, they need nutrients, and they're going to get nutrients from the work the decomposers do. Let's look really quick at this definition of what is a decomposer one more time. A decomposer is an organism that gets its energy by breaking down dead organisms or the waste of living things. So we asked a question here, does a mushroom make its own food? And the answer is 100% no! No, it does not make its own food. A mushroom is a decomposer and it gets its energy by breaking down other living things. So a decomposer has to get to the waste, the dead stuff, what's remaining of living things, and that is how decomposers get energy. Now, what are the two big decomposers? That's right, fungi and bacteria. And yes, the fungi joke is one of my favorites. Fungi are organisms that obtain their energy by absorbing materials from their surroundings. Mushrooms, molds, and yeasts, they're all fungi. Now remember, if you're talking about a bunch of mushrooms or a bunch of molds, those are fungi, that's the plural. The singular form of fungi is fungus. So right here in our image, we can see the red Amanita mushrooms. They get energy by breaking down leaves and other plants that fall onto the forest floor. Mushrooms are not plants. Mushrooms do not have chlorophyll. Mushrooms do not carry out photosynthesis. They are not producers. Mushrooms are decomposers. Mushrooms are not plants. Mushrooms do not have chlorophyll. Mushrooms do not carry out photosynthesis. So they are not producers. All right. Now let's look at this image here. Okay. These bacteria are decomposers that get their energy from dead leaves. The image is greatly magnified. So, when we look at bacteria, bacteria are tiny single-celled organisms. Many bacteria are decomposers, but some other kinds of bacteria can cause diseases. So we're going to see bacteria that is breaking down all of this living matter in order to create nutrients in the soil for the producers to use so that they can grow. This is really nature's process of recycling. It's a way to take the dead living matter and turn it back into nutrients so that that plant, that producer can grow and survive, can take in energy from the sun, be eaten by the consumer, and then that food web, that food chain, it starts to build. So this is really the process of recycling through nature. And when you recycle, you use something again. So how does this process connect with the way that the things that you know about recycling? Because as decomposers feed on dead materials in the soil, they break down the decaying matter. And what do the decomposers recycle in this process? They recycle nutrients. that, again, the plants use through the process of photosynthesis to grow and make their own food. The producers come along, the consumers come along, they eat the producer. The consumer dies, the decomposers come in, they break down that organism, becomes nutrients for the plant, and we have a full circle right there of how the energy is constantly transferred. So, knowing this, why are decomposers important to plants? Because if decomposers don't break down the living material, the plants don't get nutrients, and then the system is cut off, and this is bad. This is bad news. So these decomposers, they are extremely important to the entire cycle. Now, some of you may actually compost at your house, and composting is a form of decomposition, right? Where you're trying to take that live matter, whether it's eggshells or coffee grinds, those come from a plant, leaves, grass clippings, banana peels, orange peels, onion skins, all of those things, they can be composted and they can be turned back into nutrients for the soil. And so composting is just a form of decomposition. And it's a form that many families practice, whether you live in the city or you live in the country, as a way to create new nutrients for the plants that you're trying to grow around you. Now, we've talked a lot about hydroponics, and I just want to give a shout out to all of you who have sent me images of how your hydroponics have grown and evolved over time. That is super cool. I'm really impressed to see those, and I really appreciate you sending those to me. When we talk about decomposition, we are not talking about hydroponics. We are talking about plants that are planted in the soil so that they can get that nutrients. And again, it's not the soil, it's the nutrients that they need. So when you have a compost pile, you're just creating those nutrients and it looks like dirt, it looks like soil, but you're getting those nutrients more easily and readily available for those next plants to access it and grow. Now, we've talked a lot about plants today. We've talked a lot about fungi and fungus. We've talked about mold and yeast and bacteria. And all of those things are decomposers. And they break down living things so that the producers can have more nutrients to grow in that cycle of life. And that is your job. Your job today is to describe the role of decomposers in food webs and in cycles of matter. What are decomposers important for? Why do we need them? You can do that now, scientists. I really encourage you to look around, see what decomposers you can find. Oftentimes, the best way to find a decomposer is to roll over a rotten log or even a board. If you have like a piece of wood that has been laying on any dirt in your yard, if you could flip that thing over and look at the backside of it, you're going to find some decomposers. You might find some insects. You might find some little like white fuzzy things growing like some molds. Well, those are decomposers. They're breaking down that plant matter, that live matter, in order to make more nutrients. It's a really fun process. It really is an interesting process. And it is extremely important to the health of a food web. Think about all those things as you're doing your work today. You're going to have to answer the question, how do decomposers get energy? And you're going to have to think about this cause and effect relationship. Suppose there were no decomposers in the soil. How might this affect plants growing in the area? We've talked a lot about those two things today. I know you're going to do excellent on that work. Thanks for being here with me today, scientists. Remember, I am Mr. Steier, and this is Mr. Steier's Classroom, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.